You're watching Plant Identification Through Personal Investigation with Angeline Whitmire. This is video C of the series titled A Detailed Study of Keys Used in Field Guides. In this video, we look at a dichotomous key. A dichotomous key uses pairs of statements. You have to look at the first pair and decide which statement is most accurate in describing the plant. That answer then leads to a second pair of statements. Whichever statement is most accurate in the second pair points to a third pair, and so on, until you get to the end of the pairs and discover the identity of your plant. The dichotomous key is kind of like a flowchart, moving from one step to another depending on how you answered the previous set of questions. For this practice session, let's use the dichotomous key in Fern Finder. While walking in the woods one day, we begin to notice the ferns and how they really are different from each other. Let's see if we can figure out the name of this fern. The first two-part question asks if the blade, which is the leafy part of the frond, of the fern is divided or not. It is divided, so we go to the next question with its symbol on page 11. There are four choices. If the blade is vine-like, it's not. If the blade resembles a four-leaf clover, it doesn't. If the blade is free-floating on water, nope. Or none of the above. And since this is none of the above, we go to the next page. Here we have two choices. If the blade is once divided, or if it is more than once divided. Since it is once divided, we look at the next set of choices on the same page. Now we really need to know the parts of a fern to answer the next questions. The first choice says, if the stipe is succulent and sporangia are clustered toward the tip of a fertile stalk that branches from the stipe, while the second choice says, if stipe is firm and sporangia are on the backs of pinnae or are on a separate fertile stalk. Let's look at the stipe, the part of the frond below the blade. It's dark and firm. The sporangia, the spore-bearing parts, are on the pinnae and not on a separate fertile stalk. So, we'll follow the dichotomous path of the second choice on page 14. This set of choices asks us to determine if the blade is pinnatophyid or pinnate. Pinnatophyid means the pinna, the little leaf-like part coming off the side of the blade, is connected to the blade at its base. Pinnate means the pinna is separate at the base. In our example, the blade is pinnate. Now we turn to page 18. Here we are asked to focus on the stipe and rachis. Remember, the stipe is the part below the leafy part of the frond. The rachis is the stem-like part of the blade, the leafy part. Let's look more closely at what most of us would call the entire stem of the frond. Is it heavily scaled or very sparsely scaled? We also need to look at the indusium, the covering over the developing spores, to check out its shape. We are asked to choose between round and elongate for the indusium. The stipe and rachis are heavily scaled, and the indusium is round. This answer takes us to the next dichotomous set on the same page of Fern Finder. The first possible choice is, if blade tapers to a point at the base and sterile and fertile pinnae are similar. Well, this fern does not taper to a point at the base. Let's consider the second possible choice. If blade is semi-tapering and upper pinnae of fertile frond are abruptly narrower and shorter than lower pinnae, it is Christmas fern. Aha! I think we've found it. This is a Christmas fern, which has the scientific name Polystichum acrostichoides. We just now used a dichotomous key to identify a fern, In the next video, we will look at using a dichotomous key to identify a tree. I invite you to visit identifythatplant.com for more plant identification resources and information. You've been watching Plant Identification Through Personal Investigation with Angeline Whitmire.